about that.
Yeah, this is just moments ago the president talking to the press.
Everybody tells me he's doing a fantastic job.
Are you considering Pam Bondi for any administration?
I'd consider Pam Bondi for anything, but right now I know her very well. In the meantime, she's got a very good job, but she's doing a very good job. She's always done a very good job. But in some form, I'd love to have her in the administration. But we have great people. You know, we have tremendous people. Our cabinet, I'm very happy. Now, will I make adjustment? Yes. But we have a great cabinet. You take a look at what we're doing with the military. Very happy with Secretary of Defense, by the way. Jim Mattis is doing a great job. Mike Pompeo is doing a great job. We have a truly great cabinet. I could go through every one of them. But then you might be able to figure out the one or two that I'm a little bit less happy with. That wouldn't be good. Okay, thank you. I'll see you in California. Thank you. We're going to be looking at everything. Thank you.
Well, in true Trump form, we thought he was done, but he wasn't.
Never done.
Now he is, and Ed, in moments, he'll be taken off.
Yeah, he said 2 stops in California. Important he'll be with Governor Jerry Brown, the outgoing governor, the incoming governor, Gavin Newsom. Both Democrats who have been sharply critical of this president. They didn't like some of his tweets a few days ago, blaming forest management in part for the wildfires. That's something the president addresses in this big interview with Chris Wallace. You'll see tomorrow on Fox News Sunday. But let's not forget, the president has an important role as commander-in-chief to go out there, and as he stressed, despite the attacks from Democrats about some of this, he wants to go thank the first responders who are putting their lives on the line. We've already seen dozens killed by these wildfires in California, both in northern and southern California. There are over 1,000 people missing right now at this hour. This is a desperate situation. This president trying to go lend his support, number one. And number two, he covered a whole bunch of other important issues. On the issue of special counsel Robert Mueller, he said he did finish the answers with his legal team from Mueller's questions. He said they're all done and they will be submitted next week. There had been reports he might submit them yesterday. He says they'll be submitted next week. And Pete, interesting, he talked about the caravan. There have been these critics out there saying it was only an election issue. He stopped talking about it after the midterms. But no, actually, the president was tweeting about it yesterday, saying this is still an important issue. And Jedediah, he was also saying, look, if there are Honduran flags in the caravan, this is not, these are not Americans. These are people trying to come here, and we need to make sure they go through the right process.
Yeah, and he also talked about catch and release a lot, stressing that the catch part may happen, but the release part is not going to happen. He repeated that over and over and over again. One of the things that struck me most about this was his willingness and eagerness to help Nancy Pelosi out. I mean, he's quite a good Samaritan. He went out of his way to say that. Wouldn't that be amazing if Trump really was the reason that she retained the position?
That stuck out to me, too. He said he'll help Pelosi. He'll find her the votes. He said, I will perform a wonderful service for her. Whether she needs 50 votes or 10 or 1 or 2, I will help deliver them. An interesting political play against Democratic rival.
Why, Pete?
I can't imagine why she wouldn't want to have Trump votes in her election.
This is why some Democrats are saying she should not be Speaker, because President Trump wants her to be Speaker bad, because Republican leaders want her leading the party, being front and center. They put her in all the campaign ads, and now she could be a big target for Republicans moving forward.
She's a good fundraising tool for Democrats, but also an excellent fundraising tool for Republicans.
We're watching Air Force One taking off right now. It will land next in California for a high-stakes visit. I mean, he's got a couple of political rivals there who are managing a terrible situation with those fires. So far, they've said they want to get there, surveil it, and work together. We'll see what happens with the president on the ground.
The other thing, Nancy Pelosi, just to put a button on that, she, a couple of days ago at a news conference, said she is going to become Speaker with only Democratic votes. She realizes that if Republicans put her over the top, she will immediately come back in as Speaker for a second time wounded, because she will be seen as a Trump-backed Democratic Speaker, which will kill her with the Democratic base. We see more and more socialists elected, the Democrats being pulled to the left. I don't want to forget as well that the president pushed back on this New York Times story, suggesting that the president is privately asking advisors, do you think Vice President Mike Pence is loyal or not? The president says he's not doing that, and that the New York Times should have checked with him. I'm sure the New York Times is going to respond as to whether they reached out for comment or not. But interesting political intrigue there. And then important to put on the table, this story that we've been talking about a little bit this morning about the CIA now having a new assessment suggesting that the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia was behind the assassination of that Saudi Washington Post columnist. The Saudi government denying it, but remember, they've denied a lot of pieces of this story that have turned out to not be true in terms of their account. And the president saying, look, they're an important ally still. Very controversial, but let's not forget, as the president points out, a lot of arms deals that bring American jobs, and also that Saudi Arabia, despite all of these other problems, is an ally in the war on terror in terms of fighting terrorists in Iran and elsewhere.
Yeah, he also talked about our relationship with Turkey, saying we found a new moment and an opportunity to work together. But those who follow those two countries closely realize the relationships there are precarious. There may be some shared mutual interests, but ultimately Saudi Arabia and the growing Islamist tendencies of Erdogan in Turkey have a lot of concern for a lot of people. So, but as the commander-in-chief, as the chief diplomat for this country, he's trying to build relationships, find areas of common ground. He emphasized they're still looking into what may or may not have happened with that Washington Post columnist.
He said aboard Air Force One, a little bit of new information. He said he'd be talking to world leaders. We'll see if he's talking to the Saudi king. I couldn't make out if he directly said he'd be talking to the king or the Crown Prince, but also he clearly said he'll be speaking on Air Force One by phone with Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, to deal with that, no doubt to deal with North Korea as well.
Yeah, he also talked about Republicans picking up Senate seats. We have that soundbite. Let's take a listen.
You won the Senate. You do recognize, right? That means all the judges that I'm getting approved will now be easier because we actually picked up, which is historic, we picked up 2 seats in the Senate. We went from 51-49 to 53-47. That's a tremendous difference. And these are senators I really like. That's also a difference.
Well, he's been tweeting about that recently as well, a frustration saying all the coverage is breathless about the House. No mention of the Senate and 2-seat pickups. And with the focus on the courts being such a big part of what they've done, and he's going to have some new spots with confirmation battles coming before the Senate as well. That's increasingly important.
He said, by the way, in this exchange with reporters, he's close to naming a U.S. ambassador to the UN. Heather Nauert, a former Fox anchor, has been talked about, now a State Department official, as the likely pick there. He said that's coming soon. He said he's not close to picking a permanent attorney general. Obviously, Matt Whitaker is the acting attorney general, very controversial, Democrats attacking him.
But I thought the First Amendment was done at the White House, Ed. Like, I didn't know that reporters still got to ask questions. Did the reporters, are they still allowed on the White House grounds?
I detect a little bit of sarcasm.
Just a little bit.
I think he considers himself, it's interesting, a fact checker sometimes, you know, where he comes out and he says, it's not that he's trying to limit freedom of the press, it's that he gets tired of the way things are reported sometimes. The fact that they, you know, run a story on him, nobody asks him for comment, as he claims. Or, you know, he compared, interestingly enough, some news stories written like novels, he said. And I think a lot of people at home hear that and they say, you know what, that's true for me.
I saw Pete smiling.
Oftentimes I go and I read something that's supposed to be hard news, and it's not. It's editorial.
It's true, and he's staying true to this point, this idea that you want to get rid of the divisiveness in our country. We could use a little bit more of actual fair reporting and journalism that sticks to the facts as opposed to editorializing. He's forced to push back from his view, clarify, as you said, be a fact checker, which then the left and the media claims he's calling them out and he's being the divisive one, and he feels like he's clarifying.
Pete, I'll give you credit because you're right about something there where you're saying that there's this big fight about the First Amendment, and in all seriousness, I've never seen, covered a lot of presidents, never seen a president more accessible. Democrats can attack him all day. He takes more questions than any president I've seen, Democrat or Republican. They might not like the answers, they might not like the exchange, but he is more accessible than anyone. By the way, we said the president talked a lot about Nancy Pelosi, the future of the Democratic Party. Democrats took the House. He talked about how Republicans increased their majority in the Senate. But what are the Democrats going to do? Is it going to backfire? Well, the first thing we heard after they gained power, they haven't even been sworn in yet, is that they've got 85 subpoenas lined up to investigate the president. That may boomerang on them.
Okay, so resist is still on
the agenda.
Check number one.
Here's something even bigger that might boomerang on them as well, which is taxes.
That's right. So there's a Washington Post headline that caught our eye. It said Democrats face early division over rules for tax hikes. It goes on to say this. For some context, the GOP rule that currently exists requires a 3/5 supermajority vote in the House to approve any income tax increase. So you need a lot of votes if you're going to increase taxes. Democratic leaders would replace it with a rule requiring that same supermajority vote to approve tax increases for most taxpayers, but for only a simple majority vote to raise taxes for the wealthiest 20% or for corporations. So, Jedediah, they're saying, well, if we want to raise taxes and make it easier to do so.
They're barely even in there yet. It's like
they're not in.
One
they're
toe
not
in the door. It's
yeah.
like one toe in the door, and they're like, hey, by the way, your taxes are going up. I can't imagine. I mean, they have such a hard time with messaging, as is Democrats, and people are always talking about struggling with messaging. A positive message. The first thing you come out with is how to make job creators' lives harder.
Every single Democrat voted against tax cuts. Okay,
right.
The flip side of this. Number two, Nancy Pelosi, we were talking about it, she called them crumbs after they passed. Yep. And now, to your point, they haven't even been sworn in yet,
right.
and they're saying, we want to take it away, and we want to raise taxes. We want to increase taxes.
And, of course, it's to help pay for all these programs that we always say are very difficult to fund. You know, you talk about, everything from health care. Everybody has a right to everything now, and everything's, this should be free, and college tuition should be free. Nothing is free. Somebody pays for that, and those people are called us.
You're exactly right. But it's who they are. They can't resist it. You talk about the messaging.
Resist?
I know.
They can't resist?
There's no other message.
They can't resist resisting, and they can't resist raising your taxes. Just all resistance all the time.
If you don't love the free market, you got to raise people's taxes because there's no other way.
Bingo. All right. And we got some headlines.
We're turning now to your headlines. A serial killer convicted in 3 California murders is now confessing he was involved in about 90 murders nationwide. Samuel Little says the killings date back to 1970. Investigators say so far he has told the truth for more than 30 cases. If more match up, Little will be one of the most dangerous killers in U.S. history, topping the infamous Ted Bundy's 30 homicides. Wow.
Gosh.
A bill creating some of the strictest anti-abortion rules in the country passes through Ohio's House of Representatives. The heartbeat bill would ban abortions once a fetal heartbeat can be detected, which could be as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. It now moves to the Senate. Outgoing Ohio Governor John Kasich vetoed a similar bill in 2016. And President Trump awards 7 people with America's highest civilian honor. One of those honorees, Minnesota Supreme Court Justice Alan Page. He was recognized for his NFL career and a lifetime of public service. Other honorees included Elvis Presley, the great Babe Ruth, and the late Supreme Court Justice, one of my favorites, Antonin Scalia. And those are our headlines.
Orrin Hatch as well.
Yep.
Retiring senator.
Pretty amazing people.
Yeah. Still ahead. Former acting ICE Director Tom Homan. He's a favorite. He's going to come in.
Florida's manual recount entering its 2nd day, moving one step closer to a decision in the Senate race. In the governor's race, Ron DeSantis clinching victory, but his Democratic opponent, Andrew Gillum, still refusing to concede. Joining us now with her reaction is Jeanette Nunez. She will be the first Latina elected lieutenant governor in the state of Florida. Congratulations, Jeanette. That's fantastic, first of all. And I want to get your insight into what's going on in Florida right now with all of these recounts. How do you think this is all going to land or how it's going to wind up?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this morning, and we're just really excited about the opportunity to lead Florida. And Ron DeSantis and I are hard at work making sure that when we take that oath and swear to uphold and defend the Constitution, that we're going to be making sure that Floridians are going to see the wonderful progress that we're looking forward to bring to the state of Florida. As it relates to the recount, we're certainly, we have been just focused on the hard work of transition and making sure our administration is ready to lead. And honestly, I think it's sad that that our opponent refused to concede. But at the end of the day, we're focused on Floridians, and that's been our focus throughout the campaign, and that's going to be our focus as we lead into the administration.
You know, I've got to ask you about something that's been driving me crazy as it relates to the New York Times, because they declared a banner of the year for women in politics, and they omitted Republican women's accomplishments. You're not in there. There's so many other Republican women that are not in there. The quote from the New York Times reads, "It is the year of the woman, all right, but only for Democrats." This seems really crazy to me. How does it strike you as someone who just achieved a huge milestone, a huge success, to not be included on that list and to see other Republican women who've accomplished things not be acknowledged at all?
Well, of course, it's disappointing, but it's not surprising. I know that there was several women throughout the country that had banner years and certainly were in positions of importance, from governor to senators to congresswomen. And so I think it's disappointing that a news article would leave out important Republican women just because of their party affiliation. But we're not focused on that. We're focused on leading, and we're focused on making sure that Florida, in my case, is going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to address the challenges that we face, and I'm excited about that opportunity to lead.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people that weren't recognized, just to name them, Marsha Blackburn, Kristi Noem, Kim Reynolds, so many women around the country. And I think this is a tough issue for Republicans because Republicans generally don't like identity politics and don't like to talk about first woman, first man. They just say, let people run and let the best person win the job. But is this a point oftentimes that Democrats win on when then they say, well, look at the numbers. You know, you have tons of Democratic women boosting and you don't have enough Republicans. Does the Republican Party have a problem with women or outreach to women? Is that a point that they win on if Republicans don't do something about this, or should they step back and just focus on running their districts, their country, and not worry about that stuff?
Well, having served for the past 8 years prior to this post in the legislature, I can tell you that there's many Republican women that have paved the way, that have led the way in ensuring great conservative policymaking. And so I really think that we have an opportunity, certainly, to address what may be perceived as a lack of women recruitment and retention. But I think that we really are focused on good quality people. And if you look at Florida, we had a newly elected Representative Josie Tomkow in her early 20s, along with Representative Amber Mariano and Jennifer Sullivan, young Republican women that are taking the baton and leading the way for the next generation of women.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you great luck in what you do. And I do think that the world is a better place when more people, both men and women, are out there fighting to kind of restore sanity and integrity in this country. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Have a great day. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Usually it's math and science that are mandatory, but one school is now requiring diversity and inclusion. Really? Plus, President Trump now taking on a new report questioning Vice President Mike Pence's loyalty. Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer is here to weigh in.
A couple of quick headlines for you. President Trump names Andrew Wheeler as the permanent head of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. The president making the announcement during the Medal of Freedom ceremony. Wheeler has been overseeing the agency after Scott Pruitt resigned amid allegations of ethical misconduct. Ed may or may not have done an interview.
I interviewed him once.
And South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is in line to become the next Senate Judiciary Committee chairman based on his seniority. Current chairman Chuck Grassley announced Friday that he's stepping down so he can lead the Senate Finance Committee next year. So up next, it looks like Lindsey Graham.
Finance is where the money is. Just FYI. The New York Times publishing a report about President Trump and his number two, Vice President Mike Pence.
In the piece, the New York Times says the president questions whether Pence is loyal and even raises the possibility of replacing him on the 2020 ticket. The president just addressed the report, calling it fake news. Listen.
I don't question his loyalty at all. He's 100% loyal. It was a phony story. I doubt they had any sources. A typical New York Times phony story. Mike Pence is 100%. Not even a doubt about it in my mind.
Here to react is Sean Spicer. He is the former White House press secretary and author of The Briefing.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sean. What do you make of Trump's response to that New York Times story and in general of just the talk about Pence being replaced?
I think the president's, I'm glad he addressed it this morning. Mike Pence is hands down the most committed, loyal, and effective vice president that any administration, any country would want to have. And I'm glad the president put this to rest. I don't know why it needed to be put to rest. He had addressed it at the press conference the other day when he very publicly asked Mike Pence to be his vice president when he seeks re-election, and Vice President Pence was very clear that he was honored to do so. So I'm not entirely sure why this is a question, but the president, the administration in this country are lucky that we have someone as talented, committed, loyal, and as effective as Mike Pence as vice president.
So nothing to see here. You never saw anything behind the scenes that would lead you to believe anything differently.
Oh, no, quite the opposite. I think the president really values Mike Pence's counsel. And as I mentioned, I mean, you can't say it enough, but Mike Pence is a tremendous partner. I've known Vice President Pence since he was first elected to Congress, and he is the kind of person that anybody would want by their side as a partner.
So Trump, Spicer, no chance of that, you're saying?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. In all seriousness,
I will say this, not just Trump, Spicer. I think there's no yard sign that ever says Spicer on it to an elected office.
we'll see. You used to be the press secretary.
You never know.
What's happening in that press room? A lot of chatter about it recently, including a lawsuit. The president sat down with Chris Wallace from Fox News Sunday. Here's what he said, and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
Nobody believes in the First Amendment more than I do. And if I think somebody's acting out of sorts, I will leave. I'll say, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you coming, and I'll leave. And those reporters will not be too friendly to whoever it is that's acting up.
So there's a First Amendment issue, and obviously this interview, Check Your Local Listing, is going to air tomorrow on Fox News Sunday. But a lot of the president's critics, Sean, don't want to admit there's a decorum issue here as well. There's respect for the president and the office of the presidency. But there's a push and a pull, as you know better than anyone standing behind that podium, to make sure you're also being fair to the press, even when they're not always fair to you. How do you come up with reasonable rules of decorum without people saying you're trampling all over the First Amendment?
That's a great question, Ed. And you know this. You've been in the briefing room on, countless occasions for multiple outlets. The reality is this. I think that there's two issues at hand that are getting conflated. The First Amendment gives every reporter the ability and the freedom to write whatever they want and to ask whatever they want. And we've got to be crystal clear that in no way, shape, or form should the White House or any government entity ever prevent anyone from the media from asking whatever they want or writing about whatever they want. But I think that bigger and broader point is behavior and decorum. And I think that there should be some reasonable rules in place. And I think, frankly, it's unfortunate and sad that we've come to this because a couple bad apples have tried to make this about themselves, and it's disrespectful to their colleagues. So I think to sit down and say, and look, and here's the funny thing, you know this, Ed, in particular, having been in there, that there are certain unwritten rules and tradition about how things work that get explained to every incoming administration about the traditions that go on and how things are supposed to work. I think it's unfortunate, but I think we need to codify those in some kind of in writing and say, okay, well, here's what we will agree to. We will never allow ourselves to stop a reporter from asking a question they want, but reporters will now have to agree to certain decorum standards and professional standards in terms of how they engage with the president, in particular at public events. It's sad. It's unfortunate that we've come to this, but I think that because publicly these other members of the media who privately will tell you they're very disappointed with Mr. Acosta and others' behavior need to come forward and be part of the solution now.
Sean Spicer, he is tanned, rested, not ready to run for anything,
Not
just to be clear.
You know what? I just don't want to be as hardworking as Ed Henry. I turn the TV on at night. He's there in every show. I wake up in the morning. There he is. My goodness.
And then I see him in my dreams. Like, it's just way
Not
too
good,
much.
Pete. That's not good.
Sean, have a good weekend. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
You too, guys.
All right. Moments ago, the president calling out the migrant caravan.
If they have such fear and such problems and they hate their country, why do we see all the flags being waved?
Well, the media is claiming he's no longer talking about it, but you just heard him talk about the caravan. Former acting ICE Director Tom Homan here to react next.
And according to a new op-ed in Democratic circles, anti-Semitism is becoming normal. Alan Dershowitz, who's a lifelong Democrat, agrees. He explains what's going wrong in his party coming up soon.
Talking about all their great fear, all their problems with their country, but they're all waving their country's flag. What is that all about? If they have such fear and such problems and they hate their country, why do we see all the flags being waved? For Guatemala, for Honduras, for El Salvador, we're seeing flags all over the place. Why are they waving flags? This has nothing to do with asylum.
Moments ago, the president slamming members of the migrant caravan, also slamming his critics who keep saying it's not a big deal. Well, at the same time, these migrants are waving their own country's flag, certainly not American flag.
Yeah, here to react is Tom Homan, former acting ICE director and Fox News contributor. Tom, thanks for being here this morning. The president has made that point a couple of times now. Isn't it ironic that members of the caravan are fleeing a country they say is too violent and doesn't provide for them, yet carrying that country's flag as they come toward our border? What does it say about the motivations of migrants?
Well, I've said that just about every day this past week. When I watched the videotapes that Fox is playing, I said in my 34 years, I never watched a group of people who are supposedly escaping fear and persecution from their home governments carrying the flag of their oppressors. So as I've constantly said for several weeks, this isn't so much about escaping fear and persecutions because of race, religion, or political affiliation. This is about getting to the United States for a better life. And I get it. I get it. But it doesn't mean political asylum. You don't qualify, so most of them will be turned around and sent home.
Yeah, so you're saying flag or no flag, you better have a valid reason. And ultimately, do you feel like it's part of a PR effort to make it, to appear more empathetic? I mean, what's the motivation?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the facts are you can only claim political asylum if you can show you're escaping fear and persecution because your race, religion, social affiliation, political affiliation, poverty, and seeking a job and reuniting with somebody who's already in this country legally doesn't qualify. But because of the past administration, what's happened in the past, they know all they got to do is say a few key phrases that they're coached on by attorneys and groups, and they get that first interview and they get released. And many don't show up in court, and then once they show up in court, they don't leave. I mean, I think less than 5% of the family units that came in the last several years have been removed, even though most of them have been ordered removed.
Mr. Holman, pardon me, what about this? The critics of the president are also saying, well, you know, there's only women and children mostly, and these are calm, peaceful folks. They don't want a problem. And then you see the mayor in Tijuana now asking the Mexican government for $4 million as the migrant caravan starts to overwhelm his city and saying, I need that $4 million, what, for security to deal with the caravan. If it's all women and children, why does he need $4 million?
Well, look, I think Mexico could have done more on their southern border. They wouldn't be in this position. They could have stepped up and worked a little harder in their southern border to present these people coming through. I appreciate Mexico offering these folks asylum, you know, over 2,000 accepted asylum, but the same people who said these are family groups are the same people who said there wasn't even a caravan. They're thousands of miles away. You look at the video, and most of these are single adult males looking to come and get a job. And I want to make something clear. You know, I get called a lot of names. You know, I'm a enforcement guy, and I'm a hateful man. Look, I've said many times in every speech I've ever given, I certainly feel bad for the plight of these people. I do. But political asylum isn't the way to go. You want to be a part of the greatest country on earth, you got to do it the right way. You got to respect our laws. Because you're poor and looking for a job doesn't mean you get to enter this country legally, which is a crime, and take advantage of our laws. Bottom line is, you know, we have a set of laws. We're a country of laws. We have a right to be a sovereign country. We have the right to protect our borders. And this is what we're doing. And we got a president who takes this seriously. And I've said it many times. I'm grateful that President Trump is our president during times like this. No one's done more for border security, public safety, rule of law than President Trump.
All right.
Thank you so much, Tom.
You know, and folks on the left said the migrant caravan wasn't coming, it would never get here. Well, it turns out it is. Director Holman, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
This morning, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate you.
We are turning now to your headlines. A suspect leads a dramatic high-speed chase in a police officer's stolen car. The LAPD used a pit maneuver to end a 45-minute pursuit in Los Angeles. The driver was taken into custody. The stolen white Lexus reportedly had the officer's gun inside. It's unclear if the service weapon was recovered. Congresswoman Mia Love may end up back in Washington. The Utah Republican takes the lead in her House race. Voters are still being counted this morning. Love is now leading her Democratic challenger by a razor-thin margin of 419 votes. The state's threshold for an automatic recount is a final margin with 1/4 percentage point. A school is now forcing students to complete acceptance training. Georgia Southern University will mandate all students to take diversity and inclusion classes, according to the student newspaper. The School Student Government Association reportedly recommended the move due to a cultural disconnect at the university. And a World War I veteran's family finally receives his Purple Heart Award. U.S. Army Private Michael Walsh's relatives taking possession of his military honor 100 years after his death. The Irish immigrant was killed in France in 1918, 7 years after emigrating to the United States in search of the American dream. An American organization that returns lost medals helped arrange the special ceremony in Ireland. That's beautiful.
Cool.
That's really amazing.
Very cool.
And those
Never
are your
forget.
headlines.
You know, the president said Mia Love didn't give him any love. Maybe now she'll get reelected. We'll see.
Maybe
They'll have a
she
meeting.
will.
Yeah. All right, Rick. How's it looking outside?
Hey, guys, we're trying to corral everybody into one tight thing. Hold on. What's your name?
Aubrey.
You just saw your face on camera, didn't you?
Yeah.
I could see it in your eye. You're like, oh, whoa, I'm on TV. Nicely done. That was your moment. Now it's all over. Take a look at the weather map. Show you what's going on. We have really a pretty nice day almost everywhere across the country. Picture City here. Throughout the day, we'll see a few snow flurries flying up right around the Great Lakes. But overall, we're looking pretty good. Down across the south, tons of sunshine everywhere. Temperatures very nice, especially across parts of Florida. Cooling down, though, across parts of Oklahoma, and that's because we have a little bit of a front moving on through. Very cold temperatures today across parts of the Dakotas, and you see that little snow that's going to It's finally out across the west. Air conditions really bad still across California from the fires that are going on. We have rain coming in on Wednesday. It's going to help the fires. It's going to finally bring some relief for the air quality there as well. And here's what Wednesday looks like. This is the total of precipitation on Wednesday. We're going to have a little bit of rain across parts of Texas and out across the west. Aside from that, a great travel day. All right, guys, back to you inside.
Thanks, Rick.
Hey, Rick, thanks.
Thank you.
You know what? I love Thanksgiving so much. Maybe Rick will let me do the Thanksgiving forecast tomorrow.
That's tough, maybe.
I'm going to ask
I don't
him
know
and
about
decide.
that.
I don't know if it's a good
Doesn't
idea.
like to give it up.
Don't do that.
All right. I don't blame him. According to a new op-ed, in Democratic circles, anti-Semitism is becoming normal. Alan Dershowitz, a lifelong Democrat, agrees. He explains some quick headlines. Drivers trying to get over the hump in a blistering snowstorm. They get some inspiration from a runaway camel. Motorists passing it down a busy Pennsylvania highway. Einstein is okay. He was reunited after escaping his broken-down ride with the Jewish Federation of Greater Philly. Interesting. And this guy is trying his best to get into Hogwarts next school year. This pig is blowing up the internet, dressed like the famous wizard in Harry Potter. He's even posing outside a building in Quebec, Canada, that looks just like the fictional school. Pete?
Ed, you make the walk look so smooth. Some prominent Democrats have come under fire for not denouncing Louis Farrakhan's hateful rhetoric about Israel. And now, newly elected Minnesota Democrat Ilhan Omar is making a 180 on her, well, what used to be support of Israel. Take a listen to her during an August debate at a synagogue. Listen.
I support a two-state solution. I think it is going to be important for us to recognize Israel's place in the Middle East. I believe right now, with the BDS movement, it's not helpful in getting that two-state solution.
So then the BDS movement was not helpful. But since winning the election, her campaign now says she supports the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, the BDS movement against Israel. She's not alone. Some now saying anti-Semitism is becoming normal in Democratic circles. Here to react is lifelong Democrat, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus, and author of The Case Against Impeaching Trump, Alan Dershowitz. Professor, thanks for being here this morning. I know this is an issue you are very passionate about. I'm going to use another tweet that Ilhan Omar put out from 2012, where she said, Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. Hashtag Gaza, hashtag Palestine, hashtag Israel. So she was clearly anti-Israel then. She covered it up a bit to run for office. Now she's full out for the BDS movement. What does that say about her and the modern Democrat Party?
Well, the Democratic Party is not anti-Semitic, but they are tolerating anti-Semitism on the hard left part of their base because they don't want to alienate that part of their base. And so you get Keith Ellison gets elected deputy chairman of the Democratic National Party, even though he had close associations with Farrakhan and falsely denied them. Bill Clinton, who I like very much, who's a friend, goes to a memorial service, sees Farrakhan there and doesn't leave. Imagine if he had seen David Duke, he'd get up in a minute and leave. Many members of the Black Caucus have had associations with Farrakhan. And now we have this newly elected member of Congress. Look, I support diversity. I think it's a great thing to have Muslims and Muslim women in Congress, but this woman has gone over the line to anti-Semitism. She talked about Israel hypnotizing the world. I mean, that's kind of an old anti-Semitic trope. So my concern is not that the Democrats are becoming anti-Semitic, it's that they are unwilling to attack anti-Semites on the extreme left of their base because they don't want to lose votes.
So you think it's political? I mean, you're acknowledging there's tolerance of intolerance, and it's ultimately a political calculation. But yet, it used to be that support for Israel was very bipartisan in Washington. Are you saying Israel is becoming effectively a partisan issue?
Well, I hope not. I think Israel still is bipartisan among the mainstream Democrats. But when you elect people to Congress who have very strong anti-Israel views, it begins to raise questions about whether bipartisanism will remain in the future. Remember, these are young people. Some people are saying They are the future face of the Democratic Party, and they are not only anti-Israel, but often that anti-Zionism morphs into anti-Semitism. Look, the Republicans had a problem as well with anti-Semitism on the hard right, and they have been justly criticized sometimes for an unwillingness to attack the extreme right on their base.
Well, you would acknowledge that that's a much larger problem inside the modern left of the Democrat Party. If you would, for a second, you agree.
Yeah, no question.
The BDS movement, briefly, break it down for our people why it's so dangerous.
Well, it's not a movement. It's only directed against one country, the democratic nation-state of the Jewish people. And it basically says you can't have anything to do, any cultural exchanges, any scientific exchanges with only one country, and that is the only democratic country in the Middle East. It's an anti-Semitic movement to its core. I wrote a book a few months ago called The Case Against BDS, showing that it's anti-peace and it's anti-Semitic. And anybody who supports the boycott movement solely against Israel, without condemning Hamas, without condemning Saudi Arabia, without condemning some of the most repressive regimes in that part of the country, there's only one excuse or justification for focusing on the only nation-state of the Jewish people, and that's anti-Semitism. The Democratic Party has to do a better job. The Republican Party has done a better job in ridding it and condemning the anti-Semites on the hard right. Now the Democratic Party must do a better job in condemning anti-Semites
we'll see
on the
if they can, because there's a lot of new young congressmen and women who see the world differently than old-line Democrats might. Alan Dershowitz,
and they have to be condemned.
Appreciate it. Enjoy Miami. Looks good there. Appreciate your time. All right, well, President Trump says he's completed his written answers for Special Counsel Mueller's probe. So what's next? We're going to ask Greg Jarrett that. He would know. He's with us next hour. Plus, believe it or not, Black Friday is almost here, and Kurt the Cyber Guy here to break down the best tech deals of the season. Selfishly, I have a few questions of my own.
All right, get ready, get set, shop.
Oh. Good morning, it's Black Friday.
I'm like in a forest over here.
No, you're in a holiday wonder.